Right, hey guys, how we doing? Back another video from 6, and today we are checking out the actual meaning of the Akatsuki rings. So, I do remember, kind of, Too Spooky did a video on the Akatsuki rings, and I think I checked it out, like, God, a couple of years ago, I think now. This is, like, not last job prior. Um, my memory's a bit loose. If this does repeat stuff, then let me know in the comment section. I'm sure you will. But I'm loving Six's coverage on these videos. They're absolutely boss. He's got a couple now for me to check out as well after this. So we've got Boruto versus the Akatsuki. Oh my god, have you read chapter 79 of Boruto? It is chapter 79, isn't it? Yeah, wow. But anyway, and then we've got Kakazu versus Jiraiya. So we've still got plenty of stuff to check out. So let's check this one out first, shall we?
Alongside the introduction of Itachi and Kisame, you couldn't help but notice the two bore rings, each on a specific finger.
Yeah, like every member had a different ring on a different finger representing like the two hands of the Akatsuki, wasn't it? Like they didn't really do anything with it further, but yeah, because like the one that was never replaced was Orochimaru's, and when we see his arm that Itachi took, it still has the ring on it in that one shot from the manga. But yeah,
Itachi on his right index finger and Kisame on his left index finger. Rings that bore resemblance to one we saw a severed hand that was in Orochimaru's possession
there we go.
also wore and were seemingly tied to the organization Orochimaru mentioned. Although he didn't mention it by name, we would come to know it was the Akatsuki. It wasn't until Naruto Shippuden though that we'd come to learn all these Akatsuki members wore a ring like this and what they could possibly mean. The Akatsuki rings are always thought of as some forgotten concept among the many mysteries of the Naruto world, with their true meaning locked behind a door that Kishimoto probably forgot the key to.
I mean, maybe some people do forget stuff. Like, what was it? I read that Oda, that does One Piece, has to Google what Luffy's abilities do at times when he's writing, which I think is hilarious. But also, it's been going for a hell of a long time, so it's very understandable.
And I think a lot of Naruto is looking at the hidden meanings within the hidden meanings, which allows me to take a deeper look at the series than most people would care to. That, and it's also like my job. Anyway, I think
cool.
the Akatsuki rings have a bit more meaning than most people tend to ascribe to them. And above all else, I think they're just pretty interesting. But before we get started, I'd like to ask if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe as well, since it helps the channel out a ton and I'd really appreciate it. To start this video off, let's get a couple things down about the rings. Every Akatsuki member, with the exception of Sasuke's Kara when they joined the group, wear these rings on a specific finger and they never move from that finger, making it so that there can only be 10 Akatsuki members at any time,
yeah.
max. We've seen the Akatsuki numbers dwindle before, but never have more than 10 members. The first group we were introduced to is down a member though at the end of part 1. When we are shown the Akatsuki, we see only 9 members present. This could be...
It's because Orochimaru, but then he took the ring with him. And then it's like, is the ring that important? And then I don't think it ends up being that important later on, but meh.
Due to the fact that Kakuzu killed one of his partners and they were still looking for a replacement at the time though. But I'll touch on that in a little bit. Itachi, Kisame, Pain, Sasori, Konan, Zetsu, and Kakuzu. This isn't all of them, but these were the members we know have been there the longest. Then we have Deidara and Hidan, who are more recent members, with Hidan being the most recent, excluding Obito, who is masquerading as Toby.
Right.
And Hidan says as much that he's the second newest member after Toby. While it's kind of left vague in the original manga, as I don't think Kishimoto had this all planned out, it's possible that he intended for Hidan to be saying that he was still super new here, as during this first Akatsuki meeting in Shippuden, there are some characters here that don't really make sense. I'll touch on this more later when I get to which Akatsuki member wears which ring, but it is possible that the 10th member could have never been placed in the organization, and in some way Orochimaru would always have a place in the Akatsuki, since that ring is with him, and as far as we know, the left hand pinky ring has never been placed on any other Akatsuki member. We do know that the Akatsuki will reuse rings, as Toby is granted Sasori's ring upon his demise, which holds a little bit more importance, but I'll touch on that later. The lack of Orochimaru's ring being replaced by a new ring or Akatsuki member at least lets us know these rings have that much value that there cannot be a new one made. So they either need to recover the ring or it is lost to the organization forever, which kind of puts their hatred for Orochimaru in a different light.
Yeah, it explains why they're so pissed off. It's not just like someone's left, it's like took the ring as well, man. He took the goddamn ring.
Not saying that before I discovered this it was unwarranted, but him permanently crippling the organization by bringing it down a member and decreasing the limit forever alongside just leaving is a better reason to want him dead. Datara also comments that he has to get his ring and arm back, and that's not extremely telling, but if you want to take this statement as Datara saying the ring is just as important to him as his arm,
Yeah.
it might be a stretch, but I'm just saying it is there. But let's talk about which ring each member of the organization has. Itachi, as I mentioned earlier, has the right index finger. Kisame has the left index finger ring. Hidan has the left pointer finger. Kakuzu has the left middle finger. Konan has the right middle finger, Pain has the right thumb, Datara has the right pointer finger, Sasori and Toby both have the left thumb, and Zetsu has the right pinky. These all line up with their exact positions on the Geto statue whenever they begin to seal a biju into it.
Yeah.
We're also shown in chapter 255, these fingers glow in accordance to the symbols on the rings whenever the sealing jutsu is activated. As you can see here, all 9 are lit up, and the one place where Orochimaru would be is normally left out. I mentioned this earlier in the video and I said I'd touch back up on it, but there are some things off about who's placed on the Geto statue's finger here that don't really add up. For one, the guy to Kisame's right, the man who would have the left middle finger, which if you've been paying attention, you would know is Kakuzu, is depicted with an outline like this and is quite a bit taller than Kisame.
Yeah, the designs were a bit off originally, weren't they? I remember a few people have touched on this. They're like, it seemed very rough in the idea, and then it seemed like he came up with the concept of the people after the fact.
Kisame, which makes no sense considering Kakuzu is not taller than Kisame. And he also quite literally just does not look like Kakuzu. Kakuzu's shadow looks like this, but I think being charitable to Kishimoto here, since Kakuzu is revealed / implied to have been in the Akatsuki for fairly long, that this is just an early design.
Yeah.
Same can be said for Konan, since she also looks rather weird at this meeting. I, however, don't think it's being uncharitable to assume that the man beside Kakuzu, though, is not Hidan, and instead an old partner of his that he unalived, since we also know Kakuzu is the type of person to do that. Sorry if that felt a bit out of place where I included it, but it was important to establish the hand and finger each Akatsuki members wear their ring on, before bringing up why these character figures sort of make no sense, and to maybe establish a timeline for when Hidan could have joined the Akatsuki.
I do like that. Like, Six always has a really logical approach to everything, so it always makes sense. Like, why he talks about it. Even though sometimes you're like, all right, but why? Eventually, it makes sense. Like, he's great at this.
Which we know is just sometime after Gaara's death, but before Toby. There are a couple things about this sealing jutsu and the Akatsuki's progression that I'd like to note moving forward. As I already sort of implied, I think that this sealing jutsu is tied to the Akatsuki rings in some way, shape, or form, due to the fingers lighting up with the symbols of the corresponding Akatsuki members. And since
because like, why would the symbols match the rings and then glow like that? Like, they don't need to do that.
each of these Akatsuki members are only projections of themselves, and their actual bodies are elsewhere throughout the shinobi world. There was a theory I came across that this ring is what allows them to get in contact with one another for these meetings that they conduct in order to seal biju or give each other updates. However, this is not true as confirmed by Data Book 3. The jutsu is called Art of the Astral Projections. Akatsuki virtual images appear in the darkness. When members of the Akatsuki sit down and release thought waves converted from chakra, Pain, acting as the control tower, receives waves, amplifies them, and uses them to create a phantom body image in a specific location. Unlike a simple projected image, the phantom body image can, with Pain relaying commands, invoke a range of jutsu. And in regards to this passage here, I had ChatGPT translate the original kanji to see what it had to say about this and if Viz was being accurate here, and it virtually says the same thing, so I'll just have it on screen for you to read if you want to. Then there's this small passage that captions Pain, and it just says Pain is able to perceive the chakra of Akatsuki members. Their amplified thought waves appear as a phantom body image. Pretty simple stuff, but I didn't want to do a video on Akatsuki rings and ignore one of the more common theories I saw during my research as to how important they are. Now, moving on to the sealing jutsu and the Akatsuki's progression, it's worth noting that the eyes in the Geto statue correlate directly to the amount of biju sealed within it. If you want some evidence for this, on chapter 261, we see while the Akatsuki's in the middle of sealing away Gaara, it has 2 eyes with pupils on it, and another pupil starts to appear just vaguely, we see Pain comment that it's nearly complete. And when we see Pain say that it is complete, the eye is completely filled in. I have more evidence for this, but I'll present that in a minute when going over the 9 Phantom Dragon sealing jutsu. But for now, what does this mean? It means that the Akatsuki prior to Gaara had only obtained 2 different Biju. This is important because while we don't get a direct time frame, when Pain says how long it'll take to seal the One Tails away, which was 3 days, Kisame comments that they should allow more time now that Orochimaru was gone. Since Orochimaru left the Akatsuki 10 years ago at this point, I think the conclusion here is obvious. The Akatsuki haven't obtained a Biju in at least 10 years.
Right, yeah, so the last time they caught one, they had Orochimaru help. So it's a bit unsure as to whether it'll actually take that long without him. Interesting.
This could possibly explain just how much Orochimaru crippled the organization if they actually haven't sealed the Biju away since he left the organization. We know that there are Akatsuki members that are obviously stronger than Orochimaru, like Itachi at the time.
Yeah, like if they... that's something that confused me, though. Is like if they really wanted to, like, fuck him up and get that ring back or whatever, they could have easily done that, especially with the situation he's in where he can't use his arms and that.
And Obito behind the scenes, but they did lose a very powerful member whenever Orochimaru eventually left the organization. Moving on to the sealing jutsu itself, the 9 Phantom Dragon seal, this is what the data book has to say about it. Sealing all captured Jinchuriki in a giant statue. A maximum of 10 shinobis concentrate their aggregate consciousness to activate the sealing statue and use the absorption chakra that flows from its mouth to extract the chakra of the tailed beast and seal them away. It takes several Akatsuki class casters several days of keeping the statue active. It is impossible for ordinary shinobi to even activate the statue. Then the little passage at the bottom here says absorption chakra takes the form of a dragon with 9 bodies that completely seals the chakra of the tailed beast. Once the sealing is completed, the eyes of the statue opened. As for getting it translated by ChatGPT, I couldn't extract the text off of this image like I did with other panels, so we'll just be going over this one scan. That little part at the end just confirms what I was saying about the eyes opening being in correspondence with the Biju being true, which would then validate the rest of what I said about the Akatsuki's progression and them only having 2 Biju captured within the last 10 years. The beginning of the passage stating that a maximum of 10 shinobi being involved with this jutsu doesn't prove directly, but it lends credence to the idea that it is tied to the rings, since there is also a maximum of 10 rings out at any given time. The data book also shows you the page for the manga that each finger is lighting up, and I think this is supposed to be where it is saying the Akatsuki members keep the statue active, which takes them several days. But that's all for the sealing jutsu. Let's talk about the symbols of the Akatsuki members' ring,
what do they
since
mean?
that's a pretty important part of their design and they have some cool meanings. I'll leave a link to this Reddit thread in the description, but I did some looking into this on my own and found information similar to what I found in this thread, and I don't want people saying I just copied it, so I'm going to leave it down there anyway. Starting with Pain, his corresponds with a number, that being 0. 0 can mean a couple things, but the most contextually fitting thing for it to mean is a starting point or a leader. This corresponds not only with Pain's position in the organization, but Yahiko's body as well, since Yahiko, or Tendo, is the only Pain body that bears an Akatsuki ring, and Yahiko started the Akatsuki himself long ago. A weird next person in my opinion, but I want to talk about Hidan because it's one of my favorites when looking into this. Hidan's ring means 3, and I'm sure you can see where this is going to go from here. Hidan's scythe that he carries around has 3 heads. The village he's from, Yugakure, or the village that forgot war, and the headband he wears has 3 lines on it, aside from the line that goes across them, symbolizing a rogue shinobi, of course. The ritual or prayer Hidan does to Jashin takes place on a symbol that looks like a triangle. And he also wears this symbol around his neck. And this might be a stretch, but Hidan takes 3 fatal blows before being defeated for good. One from Izumo and Kotetsu, the second from Asuma after he cuts his head off, and the third was obviously when Shikamaru ended him for good. I guess you could technically count Shikamaru's cut here as a fatal blow, but in that case I just adjust the argument to say he took 3 fatal blows before the 4th ended him for good. It still fits, but like I said, it's kind of a stretch. Anyway,
I
to
like
get
it
off my
though. I
tangent,
do
let's
like
move
it.
on to the
That's
next
sick.
Akatsuki ring symbol, that being the one that belongs to Itachi. This symbol means scarlet or deep red. This is probably assigned to Itachi within the context of the story because of his Sharingan, or maybe because of blood, as he did murder his
Yeah, it
entire
was a big
family.
massacre. That's
It's
a
also
lot
worth
of
noting
red.
that this symbol can be used to represent fire in Chinese in certain contexts, though this one may be a bit more of a stretch to connect to Itachi, since it's definitely not the primary meaning of the symbol. Its primary interpretation is vermilion or cinnabar, which are both just variants of bright red at that. But fire being associated with Itachi is nothing new. He uses fire style jutsu,
Oh
and
yeah.
he has the hottest fire with the Matarasu. Next up is Konan's ring, which bears this symbol. This just means white, and I think it's painfully obvious that this is
Paper.
just referring to her use of paper,
Yeah.
which I also used to think was a Kekkei Genkai, but it's not. It's a B rank ninjutsu. So
Oh,
Kakashi would probably just
I didn't know that. I thought that was just a thing she could do.
yank this if he ever saw her.
Yo.
Next member is Orochimaru. His symbol can represent a few things that I think can fit his character, and I think it's worth noting that none of these are really mutually exclusive. So it's possible this was picked for Orochimaru because of the multiple contexts that it can be interpreted in. The first one I want to talk about is the meaning empty or void, as
Empty.
Orochimaru, like I said earlier, permanently crippled the Akatsuki by taking the ring with him, leaving his spot permanently empty or void. Whichever one you want to use, they
But you could also say that he is technically the body he's in is empty or void, and he fills it because he possesses it.
virtually mean the same thing. The translation free or unoccupied also fits that same context. The next meaning, sky or air, fits mostly because of it being an unreachable goal for Orochimaru, which makes sense why he didn't fit in the organization. Sasuke also says that the snake reaching the sky is impossible even though it wants to. The snake in this context should obviously be Orochimaru.
Yeah.
Moving on to Datara, his symbol means green or blue, and I'll credit the Reddit thread entirely for this one because his answer of it being the opposite of Itachi's I like more than what I originally came up with, since Itachi and Datara had that little one-sided rivalry going on. The next part is where I kind of started running out of ideas, as these are sort of complicated in their meaning and go a good bit deeper than just Naruto, so I started looking elsewhere to get information, where I stumbled upon the thread I mentioned earlier. Next is Sasori, and by extension Tobi or Obito. So this is the symbol. Both the thread and ChatGPT seem to agree that the symbol means jade and is in reference to eternal life or referencing beauty. That's when Sasori wears the ring.
Right.
While the Reddit thread claims this meaning changes and is in reference to the king shogi that manipulates all the pawns in the Akatsuki, when Obito wears it, ChatGPT thinks it's more indicative of rebirth or renewal of Obito from a young boy into the ninja terrorist he eventually became, or perhaps him wanting rebirth for the world under the infinite Tsukuyomi. Both of these are fairly valid, at least with my interpretation of the Naruto series, and like with the Orochimaru, they aren't really mutually exclusive, so it's likely this symbol was picked to pertain to the multiple Akatsuki members it would have to fit and the different meanings it has. I'm going to be 100% honest here. I do not like Zetsu or care about him, and if you want to know why, here's a visual representation of why I hate him. I don't even really consider him an Akatsuki member, so I won't be reading his...
In fairness, he doesn't really do anything at all as an Akatsuki member. Like, doesn't have a single fight. Who's he partnered with? It's as if they took Orochimaru out so that Zetsu didn't have a partner, because everyone's in twos. There's 10 members, but there's 9, and then Zetsu's just left by himself.
Symbol. If you want to know what the thread says, here you go. You can pause and read for yourself.
Nice.
With Kisame, I was really stumped when I translated the ring and it came out to south. I couldn't really figure out what that could mean, and like I mentioned earlier, around this area is where my creativity sort of started to run out. So I took a look at the thread and nothing, just like the direct translation and then some guy speculating. Asking ChatGPT, I got an answer I sort of liked, saying that it could possibly be referring to his village since it's located in the south of the world, or that it could be referring to the Southern Sea, which could tie into his water abilities and how he looks like a shark.
Makes sense.
Kakuzu is our last member to cover here, and his ring means north. However, nothing I find online about this actually corresponds to the manga, so I don't want to claim any of them. So I'll just show you what ChatGPT showed me. You can pause and read if you want to. A guy on the Reddit thread says he thinks that Kakuzu and Kisame's rings are supposed to be opposites of one another, corresponding with where their loyalties lie, where Kisame values his partners and teammates, and Kakuzu cares about money. But I don't agree with this interpretation of Kakuzu's character. Kakuzu does value his partnership with Hidan because Hidan is unkillable. Even if he doesn't like him very much, he keeps Hidan around even though he could have just let Hidan die and not reattach his head. He keeps Hidan around because Hidan keeps him in check because he keeps killing his Akatsuki partners. And he also respects Pain a good deal. He gets on Hidan frequently about the way he talks to Pain. And about Kisame, he does have relationships he values, of course, but Kisame, while he did change a bit, likes killing his teammates, and he says as much to Itachi. So I don't agree with that interpretation. I also don't think money is the direct opposite of friends, but whatever. Maybe there was some other meaning to that I didn't get when I read it. But that's all for the video. Most of the other things I could find about this sort of stuff was just sort of like fanficky and not really concrete. But if you like the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing as well. But other than that, have a nice day.
Awesome. Interesting stuff. Like I said, I really like... Oh, excuse me. Oh, my God. Bloody ribs. I like Six's approach to these videos, and I like how he's like, look, I'll get to it. And I think he needs to kind of like, you know, we got to a point now where we know, just do your thing. We'll see it later. But yeah, really cool. And then I think what I'll check out next is Boruto versus the Akatsuki. That'd be an interesting one. Then it's Jiraiya versus Kakuzu. I think they're the only two videos that are out at the moment. Like, but who knows? Might have uploaded some other mad stuff. The genius that he is. And I was going to randomly, I'm going to mention this now. I was going to check out Seth the Programmer's video on Bardock, but the comments section on that video is not great, and I think everyone's still a bit like, I can't believe he uploaded so quick after the drama. So let me know if you guys have a problem with me reacting to that, because I'm not a fan of what Seth did, but I'm a fan of his videos, and it just helps me have more content, if I'm honest as well. But yeah, thanks to my patrons. If we want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I ask. Support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for that. Thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, everybody. Leave comments down below. Let me know that I should watch some future videos. I'll see you guys all, and it's down.